You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is award-winning documentary filmmaker Adam Schomer, and we're going to talk about this really fascinating documentary entitled "Selling Superman." Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks, Jen. It is interesting. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you're welcome. This is a four-part documentary, and there's a lot to it. To put that, to have four parts to a documentary, there's obviously a lot to it. So I just want our audience to know before we get started what Selling Superman is all about, and then we'll go into it in a more deep level.
Yeah, the hook, the premise, right? What got me was that there's this 40-year family secret, which itself, who keeps a secret for 40 years, but it's a hidden comic book collection, 300,000 comics, and ends up Superman #1 is part of it from 1939, and that book itself worth in the grade it is probably $3-4 million. And then the question becomes, would you sell it? And as we look into that, would you sell it? We start to unbox, metaphorically and real. We unbox all the comics, the family portrait, and a lot of the trauma and pain that the comic book collection caused. So that might skew, would you keep this heirloom that has a lot of pain around it? And it makes for, wow, to me, it unravels. As a documentary filmmaker, it unraveled as we were making it, and I got to know the family more and more, and things just kept happening.
How did this documentary come about? I don't.
Yeah, I knew Darren. Darren's the main character. I knew him in high school, so I actually knew his father and the family. We played soccer together. I was a couple years older. Didn't know, that his dad had Asperger's, which now is on the ASD autism spectrum. I did not know his dad had 5 rooms full of comics under sheets and boxes. Like, Darren kept it a secret, as did the family. And so years later, we're adults. We had been in touch about other business stuff, and then he told me, he goes, "By the way, I know you make documentaries, and I trust you now, but would this be a good story? This is what's going on." This is about a year after his father passed, and I said, "Well, let me come, visit you all, see the old house before it sells." That becomes a lot of episode 1 in the old home, where you see the marks in the carpet and verite style, me just really with Darren, his mom, and his brother recounting some of the collection and the old home history. Yeah, and so once I saw them on camera and experienced it for myself, the old house and the level of hoarding, I was like, wow, this is something else, and it just fascinated me. Maybe like your audience, like how can a comic book be $3 million? How did we get to that point in life?
It's amazing. It really is amazing. I mean, but the fact that they had well over 300,000 comic books
Yeah.
that some had, never been opened really or touched, that he collected that his sons didn't really know either, correct?
They
Did they
didn't
have an
know.
idea?
Oh yeah, they didn't know what was in the collection, but they knew obviously it was happening, and they knew his father had a Superman one. They hadn't seen it, and they didn't know the level of which. And his father really didn't know how good the Superman one was because he never got it graded by the authorities. He was too paranoid. But yeah, so they knew. I mean, when your whole basement's full of boxes and covered with a sheet, you know something's in there. When 2 other rooms are the same, and when your father's saying, "Don't tell anybody about the collection." What collection? Yeah, exactly. The collection does not exist. So they knew it was there, but they didn't know what was in it because he never, yeah, like you said, he never really opened them and read them with the kids. And because of that, they're in pristine condition, which makes it a world-class collection.
It, you go through a lot of layers in this film as far as psychologically the relationship of the two sons with their father. Obviously, you interview their father's former wife, their mother, in this
Yep.
documentary, and why their marriage ended. But the pain, there was a lot of pain involved with this, which is very, if you go into this, you just think, no, we're going to have a documentary about carnivore, and then you get into family drama and psychological pain and emotional pain. So talk about that because I'm sure when you started this, that wasn't a thought that you were going to go in that direction, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was more in the direction of how do we get to this level of value? Value interests me a lot. Meaning interests me a lot. Why society places so much on heroes? Why a comic book, even if rare, would be $3 million? It still doesn't compute with me. And I really was interested in who are the people that would pay it. Who are the people that are so into Superman that would put that kind of money? It's a lot of investment. Turns out a lot of those people don't even want to be known, that would spend the money on that. So yeah, so it shifted from that to then as I saw more and learned more about my friend's family and his mom and the divorce and why she divorced him to understanding like, wow, this collection was really a totem, if you will, of the greater problems that were happening in the family of paying more attention to the books or hoarding and one's obsession and fixation than realizing like your family's having issues here or neglecting the emotions of the family. And that can happen, with the condition of Asperger's. It's harder to recognize emotion when someone's maybe uncomfortable. But his diagnosis went largely undiagnosed for a lot of their childhood. And even when he did more or less told that he had the diagnosis, he kind of sloughed it off. Everyone else is a little crazy. So that can be off-putting too to the family. Like, there's an issue, but you're not really willing to improve on yourself. Everyone's telling, everyone else is crazy, not you. When yeah, in episode 3, Darren recounts that, I think it was episode 3, I should know, but that when they got divorced, she goes into the bank and the bank tellers congratulated her, right? And to that level where like, strangers are congratulating because they knew how difficult of a person he was. And he was verbally incredibly acute, very smart man, and could argue to death, so to speak. And I know that getting back to the psychological part, entrained Darren to be very smart, to be very over prepared, but also knowing like father's a perfectionist. I got to be over prepared. It's a little bit stressful. I'm not getting the love and appreciation. It's all about achievement. Those things start to wire in, and I think it's very clear that that's the case, and a lot of us can relate to that and relate to the stress that comes with that constant way of thought instead of really like maybe just appreciating yourself for your flaws and being a little kinder to yourself. And it's hard when you're not given that model from your parents. So it becomes, I think, pretty apparent, no pun intended, the conditioning. But to the depths of it, we get to keep unboxing it. And thank you to Darren and his family for letting us in. It's not a comfortable place. As you know, the film starts off with them not really
And
wanting to do it. Yeah.
exactly. And his father was a very successful attorney and,
Yeah.
very successful. So you're right when you say he verbally was very acute and, right in there, but he also used that same kind of, uh, the what he used in the courtroom, it appears that he used with his sons also to criticize them and and especially Darren since he's the oldest and and Darren always felt inadequate and also didn't feel like he really had a relationship with his father. I don't think that's unusual with a particular generation. I think there are
Right.
many fathers of a certain period who were never really taught how to be a parent, how to be emotional, how to connect with your children necessarily. And so their job was the breadwinner. You go out and make the money and then the rest is just going to be fine. And
Yep. Yep.
so I mean, but what happened is the next generation, that the children of that generation became generally, more better parents, wanting to be better parents to their children. And that's the case with Darren and his children, how he relates to them and how he wants to relate to them because he definitely doesn't want to be like his father was. But here you go. You have a relationship with your father that's very estranged. You weren't particularly close. Then he dies, and then you discover this treasure trove of comic books that are worth millions and millions of dollars. One, as you stated, is worth close to $4 million. Just one,
Yeah.
3.5 to $4 million for one comic, and he has over 300,000. And now, what does he do with them? And Darren obviously is very, very, very smart. His father put him
Yes.
down because he didn't complete college, which is, I don't believe everybody should go to college, but he went on his own and was brilliant and formed his own career and was highly successful and had his own money. So now he's now got the possibility of even making more money. But what the dilemma is, what do you do with it? Do you really want to sell it? Do you want to keep it? Is it a keepsake? All of the ins and outs. So that's the intrigue of this documentary. Do you want to comment a little bit more about that? Because that really is underneath it all, the foundation of this film is, the emotional impact of keeping or not keeping. What do you do and how do you do it? That's the other thing. How do you do it?
Yeah, that's like a big, in the film world, a big act too. How do you go about when you've made a decision? But yeah, it's much more interesting than a lottery or treasure documentary, or even like a spelling bee leading up to the end of, all the characters coming together. This is has more depth and conflict to it, because it is a gray space. It is a family heirloom. Okay. Most of us, we'd be like, yeah, sell it, use it for something you love. Okay, cool. Me too. Yeah, and in fact, but then it's like, oh, it's my father's favorite character, and it's something my father obsessed on. Okay, it's a family heirloom. All right, and it's a pop culture heirloom, and this is the top three in the world of Superman number ones. This is crazy that it fell in my lap as a documentary filmmaker. It's my friend. And then you go, but that same heirloom is the source of so much pain. Why would you want to keep that around you? And then the heroic, I would, or the stronger, more challenging thing to do is to, well, can I rewrite that story? Can I change this heirloom into something good? Bring my friends in and take a journey and partner with people and make it kind of what I wish I would have had with my dad. That to me it's something worth watching. Let's take on that mantle. Or take on the ring, as I equate it to the ring in the Lord of the Rings. Can you turn it to good? And I think that's a real challenge that Darren took because he's an integral guy, he's a caring guy, he's a smart guy, and doesn't want to just give it all to someone without having looked through it himself and made decisions and getting to know it. And he's smart and he wants to understand things. I think that's a real big part of it. And would love to see, I think, the personal connection of the books getting in the right hands. And of course, people are gonna, you're gonna learn along the way, but it's hard for someone that's kind of in the perfection model to recognize and just make some mistakes along the way because no one's really done it before, right? There's been collections, but not in this way. And so, kudos to Darren for letting us watch his process, that act two of how do you do it? Because he did decide, I want these to get in the right hands. I'm not just gonna sell it all for 8 million, even though it could be worth 20, and just take the money and run. I want to do something cool with it. And along the way, it becomes very challenging. It becomes really not only the emotions, but then having a camera on you while you're going through your emotions. And then, people, comic book world, as one of the guys says in the film, Chuck Rosansky, the owner of Mile High Comics, the biggest store in the world, says, it's full contact capitalism. It's great and people are nice and it's a wonderful hobby, but it's also full contact capitalism. And you better have your eyes wide open, he said, because people will come for you and they'll try and take advantage. So, kudos to Darren for going for it. I think to me, it's a pilgrimage. He chose to go on a pilgrimage, whether or not he knows it or not. He making that choice to do the right thing with it puts in action a lot of other things to unfold and a lot of challenges to happen and force one to look deep within. Or you just sell the whole thing, walk away, and you never have to really deal with it, which maybe in retrospect, he might have wishes he would have done because it is still really challenging on him, to be honest.
How many does he have left?
I don't know the exact number, but a lot. Most of the best stuff is still there, but they're definitely selling and they've sold and they've moved a lot through dealers, small dealers and more regional dealers, and even have their own website now where they do sell the collection, parts of it. But I was just talking to him yesterday on the comic book side, and some of the real nicest copies of the biggest books, the keys as they would call it, the key books, still has all of those. So there's millions and millions of dollars not yet actualized.
He still has Superman 1.
He does. He does. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert to everyone. I don't think it. I don't think it. It is the big hook of the series. Would you sell it or not? But it ends up becoming less important by the end and more like why you're doing what you're doing. So I don't feel like it ruins it. But there is a big sale in the series, as you know, of a big book, and it causes a lot of issues. And part of that I think informs him of why at least in the end of the movie he didn't sell Superman. It might happen in the next months. We'll see.
So you start off this film and a number of the different chapters with this text messaging back and forth
Yeah,
between you and Darren. And
yeah,
he is constantly saying, I wish I didn't do this documentary, basically. I mean, I'll just
yes,
boil it down in the conversation. How long
correct.
did that go throughout the entire documentary process?
You
That
know,
he
it
was like
start
regretting that he was doing this?
it started at the exact moment that the film starts with that. Just so people know, it starts with that. We're hearing press coming out because he's selling a big book, and so press and the internet starts picking it up. We had already been filming for almost a year about a year at that point. And then this big sale happens. And it was at that point, and I even turned to my cameraman. I'm like, yeah, it was a great shoot, but we don't really have an ending. But I think the universe knows better than us what the ending will be. And 30 seconds later, Darren texts me what you see, like, stop the press. What is this? I'm like, ha ha ha. He's like, you think I'm kidding? And then went on to say everything on the phone that you hear about wanting to get out of this. Why am I showing the world how messed up I am? So from that point on, so that's about a year into shooting, there was kind of a lot of back and forth of, wait, what did I get myself into? And we were really pretty far into that point. It was hard to turn back. And thankfully, as you see, Darren's dealing with a lot of trolls and people coming at him and saying bad stuff, and has to fight through that and understand why is he really doing what he's doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough throughout the process. It's still kind of ongoing, to be honest. It doesn't exactly resolve. It's not like he's like, oh, now I'm happy we did the film. It's still difficult because people are still. Yeah, I just want to say, like, maybe I'm sure people realize it, but it can be tough if you're the guy in the film. People might think this is your life. That 3 hours, those 4 45-minute pieces, that's your whole life. And even furthermore, that even around this one moment in life, that's everything that happened, and it's not. We have hundreds of hours of footage and many angles we could have taken, and you share what you can share, and I share what I think's interesting, but that can be tough for the person. One thing we did do, of course, just as we're not exploitive as documentary filmmakers, at least myself, I'm not. I can't speak to every reality show that is, but we make sure like we review things with the subject, with the character, and say, is this too much? Are we pushing too far? You can tell us if something's too sensitive for the family. So it's not like they have any creative control, but they have the right to say, I'd rather us not talk about that. That's too hard. You have to be like that nowadays because people are humans, They're not just for our entertainment. It's just not how it is. So,
Adam, it was surprising how many people, the trolls and what they had to say and negative. I mean, this is what's going on in social media, as we all know. But it was surprising and shocking to see this kind of environment, how many people were so negative about Darren and what he was doing and his family. I mean, it's like really not anybody's business. I think um, that's my own personal feeling.
I agree. It's kind of disgusting. Like people just love to haul off without having seen the film. People were doing that having seen a trailer and him selling one book. That becomes again the beginning of the film. We come back to it, end of episode 3 and beginning of episode 4. It's amazing with such little knowledge how people are so dogmatic about things. Really fascinating to watch.
It really was. It was interesting to see that for sure. How many months or how many years? How long did it take you to make this documentary?
Yeah, from the moment I first went to test shoot, so to speak, on that Thanksgiving, which became a lot of episode 1, that was November 21. So till, let's say, November 24, that's 3 years until release.
Okay.
Now, from that first shoot, we weren't full on shooting. We were just picking up some Zooms and audio calls along the way. And then in May of 22, we really started filming. And I would say about a year of shooting till May of 23, and then a year of post to May of 24, while we were also during post, you're still following what's going on because that's the kind of docs I like where we're following it. It's not a biopic, you know, this is real life happening.
The fact that, I mean, I don't know if Darren didn't have the money to do what he did because he went and, got a warehouse, had made sure it was the right temperature, got the right, I mean, it was amazing what he went through to keep and preserve these comic books, which is extraordinary on its own, and then to fly all over the country to go to these different places. I mean, if you didn't have any money, you wouldn't be able to do any of that, and to get these is it accredited? They go through this whole process to, credit, give them a number of
Yeah,
accreditation
yeah,
and
grade them. They call it grading.
grade them, and to be able to do that, and he flew down there a few times too to have these books graded. So that's something that's pretty amazing, also. But the fact that what I loved about this is he brought in his friends that he's had from kindergarten, one of them, and many other
Yeah.
friends. That he brought these people that he have been deep, caring friends throughout his life, who knew his father, knew his mother, knew all about this. But he brought them all in and gave them jobs and got them involved. But also when he goes to Comic-Con and is deciding which dealers he wants to work with, my heart just opened up so much when he went to that young man. And why don't you expound on that a little bit? Because I thought that says a whole lot about Darren and his character. So for all of those trolls out there who, want to be negative, look at his heart, because his heart comes through in this film, and that's who he is. So
Yes.
so let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think his heart does come through. His generosity comes through. And like, if I was to maybe even look at Darren when he was born, the heart and generosity and the caringness is there. And then, you pick up some other things from your parents along the way. We all do. We all
Yes.
do. And we take some life to sort through those and come back to the heart side of ourselves, hopefully. Um, and Darren really has a affinity for the underdog. And, that's apparent. His brother has some special needs. He grew up, helping his brother. He still helps take care of his brother. And so I think when he met Josh in episode 2, the hatchback kid who had a smaller booth and was just really trying to, bootstrap and make a name for himself, he took well to him, and he wanted to partner with him, especially on books of a smaller nature, from $100 to $400. And even that's kind of like, the fact that a book is $400 is still amazing. But
Yes.
it brought Josh in and brought his dad in, and the kind of eeriness of that, the fact around his dad. I won't spoil that for people, but there is a coincidence nature to that is very sweet, and especially the father son. The fact that Josh and his dad did the comics together and Darren didn't have that, I think was very sweet for Darren to watch, and maybe also very painful, but I think more sweet than not to be able to see that. And yeah, other like Eric, the artist, who has about 10% of his movement in his hands, but still can draw art, and did some special things for the collection. Uh, yeah, Darren, I think, does a great job of just working with sincere people.
Yes. And that's what comes through. It's really a really very fascinating and documentary on so many different levels. And so even if you're not a comic book aficionado, uh, this is more than that. It's a deeper story on so many levels. And again, about, our relationships with our parents and our brothers and our sisters and our friends. It's about all
Yeah.
of that. So please seek it out. Where is it playing, Adam? It's a lot of places.
Yeah, the people can purchase it at Apple, at Amazon Prime, and on Google Play. 4 episodes. You can watch one episode if you want, or you can buy the whole four. I guarantee you, once you're one in, you'll want to keep going. It's structured that way, and you feel quite connected to the family. So yeah, we would appreciate if people go buy it. It's not made by the big streamer, so it's an indie 4-part doc. But everyone that's seen it is like, oh my gosh, this should be there. This is so well made. The storytelling is quite quite gripping. And Darren put himself out there, and like you said, it's it's way beyond comics. I think it's cool for people that aren't in comics to see the underbelly of a subculture and be like, oh wow, this is why collecting means so much to people, and the downsides to it, the addiction side and the upsides, the camaraderie. But then also being able to, yeah, reveal some of the family conditioning and the conflict we all have with choices. And oh, yeah, I can even throw in, a little bit of Nietzsche and philosophy in there
Yes,
in
yes,
episode.
yes.
Yeah.
Ubermensch and all of that. Oh, well, Adam, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you have a new documentary called Finding Peace that the title coming out in 2025. I wish we had more time to talk about that, but I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about that. So I look forward to talking about
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then Aaron's Law, we're in development for an Aaron's Law documentary as well. We got
it. Oh,
two of them
great,
going.
great. I would love to have you back on the show for those for sure.
Thanks, Jan. All right.
Being here. For all of those people who would love to support the Jan Price Show all about movies, you now can make a monetary investment in the show. It's a tax-free investment. And you can go to creativevisions.org and in there, go to the podcast section. You find the Jan Price Show, and you can make your donation there. You can make it. You can make a one-time donation, but you can do it monthly if you'd like. Also, by supporting the Jan Price Show, you are also supporting independent and documentary filmmakers because a portion of the money goes to independent and documentary filmmakers. So it's a win-win for everyone. You get a tax deduction, you're supporting the show, so I can continue to give a voice to independent and documentary filmmakers,
Yes.
and documentary filmmakers and independent filmmakers can continue. So thank you so much in advance for your support. And Adam, again, thank you so much for being on the show. It was my pleasure.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.